we talked in our last conversation about hiring, and you mentioned that you've learned how expensive hiring mistakes can be. No doubt you've learned that more than once. So you guys are very strict in your interviews, and you described the process. I'd love to see if this has changed and if it is different for non-technical roles. In 2016, it was number one, resume screen, good GPA, internships, and so on. Number two phone screens, which includes problem solving. Number three, bringing remaining candidates on site where they have 4 different interviews, some of which involve more problem solving as well as paired programming during which they fix a bug. So this seems to be specific for technical candidates. I'm wondering if you have anything to add to this, if you could maybe elaborate on what taking your time and looking for that extra 20% looks like. And I suppose I'm most interested in non-technical roles since I am not hiring for real technical capabilities, but anything you have to say on any of those points would be interesting.
Yeah, that interview is pretty similar to what we do now. I think, the specific actual questions may have changed a little bit. What we look for in resumes may have changed a little bit, but the overall is pretty similar, and that is for technical hires. Non-technical hires, it really depends. That's another thing about hiring. I mean, it really depends on what function you're hiring for. So, for example, designers, what matters a lot is their portfolio, and the portfolio is this magical thing. Portfolios are amazing because within 30 seconds, by looking at a portfolio, you can tell a lot. Like, it's just, you don't even have to do all that much interviewing or anything. They just look at a portfolio, like, yeah, it's good. And the other beautiful thing about portfolios, by the way, is that it's so nice because they're really good for diversity in that you don't have to know this person's name. You don't have to know what they look like. You don't have to know anything. It's just the work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So this is the beautiful thing about design, but that's very rare. Usually you don't, most fields don't have a thing like the portfolio where you just look at it and you're like, this is it. So, I think outside of these, you have to get really good at interviewing, and you got to figure out, there's a few things that really work out. One is work product. So whatever it is that they're supposed to do, you have them do some of that. It could be that they do it offline, as in, like, they don't have to do it in front of you. It could be like, look, in order to apply, you have to write this thing or whatever it is. You can take your time, just send it to us as part of the application. Work product is really good. I think that really tells you whether, and it has to be pretty close to what they're supposed to do when you hire them. So that's really good. I think there's another one, which is just kind of general intelligence stuff, which you may or may not want to do. But there are some pretty simple kind of, there's this like 3-question IQ test that you can Google for, which is just, it's not going to give you an exact, precise, with just 3 questions, you're not going to be able to get an exact IQ. But basically, if people can solve this, all 3 of these questions, they're pretty good with cognitive abilities. You may want to do that. And then the other one is just kind of more of these behavioral interviews that you ask these questions that you really do. It does make a difference for non-technical stuff. I mean, things like talk about a failure. Tell me about a time you failed. And the types of things you're looking for is, A, do they recognize that they have failed? Like, the wrong answer, the horrible ones, is this like failure, not failure? Like, where they tell you like,
I just care too much.
yeah. Or like, it starts looking like a failure, but actually it was a home run. You're like, no. Like a real failure. And so you want to understand that they understand when they failed. The other thing you want to hear there is, did they blame others or themselves? It's very telling when they tell you about a failure. It's a real failure, but they're like, but you know what? I knew what to do the whole time. It's just my manager was dumb or whatever. Or like, so that's a very bad sign.
Yeah.
That because, look, everybody's failed, and there's at least one instance, usually many, where it really was your fault. I want to hear about that, not about how you always knew all along and you're always right and it's just your manager sucked or somebody else. Because when you do end up hiring them, these are the type of people that would probably blame everybody else for their failures, and you don't want that. So there are these kind of behavioral interviews that I think really work out pretty well. So we do apply all of those. But one of the things that I have learned a lot is, and we employ it at Duolingo, when you are the hiring manager, so the person that's actually going to work with them, And usually it's because you're hiring somebody because you'd have a need. You're like, well, I need a designer on my team, or I need whatever it is. I need this on my team, and I have the need. You're extremely biased towards hiring.
Yes.
You're like, look, I just need to get this done. I just want to get it. So one of the things we do is ultimately at Duolingo, the decisions are not by the hiring manager. Hiring manager can have a lot of input, but there's somebody else that is like, and a lot of times that's me, who's like, I understand you're in deep pain right now and you need more, another person, but this person does not pass our bar. And it's not that I'm that good at the bar. It's just that I'm a different person. So I make the same mistake when I'm hiring for, an executive or something. I have a bias towards hiring because I'm like, man, I don't want to spend more time looking for, this, whatever, our head of whatever. By the way, we did this for our CFO, our chief financial officer. We took a long time. And at some point I almost gave up. I'm like, man, I'll just take whoever. Like, it doesn't matter. We didn't do that. I was lucky that we ended up, I had spent about a year looking for our CFO.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Thank God we waited. We our CFO, Matt Skarupa, is amazing. Thank God we waited. But, in the middle there, after, 9 months or so, I started faltering. I started being like, just take whoever. So it's not that I'm that good at holding our bar, but I'm very good at holding our bar when it's not me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To me, that's a big piece of advice. Have somebody else hold the bar.